So we're at TIFF, and there was a lot of traction on this project. You had a lot of cool collaborators in terms of creative forces that helped out on the producing side. I think so many different collaborators that have very distinguished careers, and they're less than a decade into their own careers. How does it feel, or what do you appreciate about having a select people like that?
Well, I mean, I feel lucky on both ends, just in terms of professionally who they are and their artistry as filmmakers, but then also just who they are as people too. They're really quite wonderful and lovely people, and dear friends for the last 10 years since we were in college, and they've always been bold filmmakers. I mean, from the shorts that we were doing, from what we were writing at that point in time when we were all younger, it was always like their voices were always quite distinct, and I think we all had our own sort of manner of storytelling, what we wanted to do, but we all supported each other. We all saw something within one another's work that we were drawn to and that we wanted to support, and we also saw something within the characters of who we were as people that we also wanted to have within our lives. So I'm incredibly blessed to be working with, for example, Sean Durkin and Antonio Campos and Josh Mond. They're amazing people.
Yeah, they are.
People. And there's great other people too that are on the team as well. I mean, from everybody, from our editor Sabina Miliani to our DP Paula Huidobro to our casting directors Cindy Tolan and Adam Caldwell. Like, I was incredibly blessed to be working with a lot of amazing people on all sides of the team, and then of course our cast too. So it's
when a male filmmaker writes a strong female protagonist, I'm wondering, is that an amalgamation of strong females presence in your own life? Like, how did you take us to the genesis about writing a character?
I mean, since a child, I don't know. I suppose I don't know. At least in terms of writing, I've always had an easier time writing women than I have men, and I think it's because I hold a far greater love and compassion and empathy for women than I do men. And with that compassion, with that empathy, I feel like there's some sort of connection as well too, but it's easier to write those characters. And if I look at like my own friend bank, the majority of them are women. There's very few. It's like a handful of men that I'm very, very close to, and the majority are women. So it's something that has come quite natural to me, for whatever that might say about me. But I have an easier time again writing women than I do with men.
So the lead figure, the protagonist in this film is Olivia Cooke. And one of the first things that you notice is that, I mean, she happens to have a job where she's sort of like taking double shifts and basically always at work, but that uniform is with her throughout. Yeah. And I thought that was a really interesting choice in terms of servicing a town. That aspect, she has the name tag. I was wondering if you could discuss that element in terms of having this character always be sort of like presented in that set of clothes.
Yeah, well, I mean, Katie she doesn't have a whole lot of money. I mean, if you look into the closet, there's a couple shots and you actually see into her closet, and there's not a whole lot of clothing that she has within that. And there's 2 scenes within the film where she's not wearing a uniform, so she's usually always working. And when she's not working, she's either going to the market to buy some gear for her mother or some cigarettes, so she's always really basically in that uniform. Yeah, I mean, it's...
Perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but the thing is this character is like, she has dual, triple roles. She's there on a physical level for a lot of people in this town, but also on some emotional level as well. She's taking care of other people's needs before her own.
Yeah, completely. For nearly everybody. Yeah.
So I thought that the fact that she's constantly in uniform sort of like extended itself to that.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't really hold that sort of intention. You
Okay.
might have those other layers that,
Yeah.
as a creator, you're not yourself aware of initially, but there might be. Yeah, that's really quite interesting.
She's a really resilient character, and she. There's a lot of prototypes in terms of like these type of films, escapism, going west. I like the use of the actual trains, and how it's then kind of sort of flipped into reverse when things are going downhill in her quest. I like how you sort of switch that up, and then there's an empty vacant spot to that, so it sort of like parallels what she's going, what's happening in her own timeline. But yeah, I was wondering if you could comment specifically on her approach to life. She has every reason to have a perspective that's glass half empty.
Yeah.
But yet, and this, it'd be unfair to call her a dumb character because she's
not dumb at all.
No, exactly, but it's almost as if her approach in life, and perhaps it's a survival mechanism, but it is very much a half, not empty, but glass half full approach that she has. I was wondering if you could talk about in the writing process how you decided to embed that character with that specific DNA. Because there's so many other film references where that person would be down in the dumps, and
I would be down in the dumps.
Yeah.
And that was the intention with the film too. Is that the majority of the people that will be watching the film, our audience, would probably, if a tenth of what happened to Katie were to happen to them, they would be down on their knees and they would probably give up, myself included. And yet we see this young waitress, this young, incredibly strong young woman, overcome all these obstacles that I think greatly probably outweigh our own, and yet she still perseveres and she still moves forward, and hopefully we'll find some sort of inspiration within her journey to sort of borrow into our own lives and to help sort of push us forward. She certainly has for me. I mean, making a film is incredibly difficult, and if there's a moment, and trust me, I did plenty of bitching, but like, if there was a moment in which like, God damn, this is difficult, like, look at what Katie has had to go through. So she was a source of inspiration for myself, and she really kept me going.
What's the genesis of this story? Why did you do this story? What's
I mean, it's odd, but from my limited experience, I feel like when I write a project, you can you're like an engineer, you're like an architect of some sort if you don't really have a connection to your characters, or you're just simply putting in the pieces to make some sort of cohesive whole, or if you're lucky, and I don't really know how many times this might happen in one's life, but you can actually sort of connect with a character that seems somehow otherworldly, where like you've been selected to tell their story. And that's what it was for Katie, and I felt that I had a moral responsibility and duty to tell her story, and to do so to the best of my abilities. So it was along those lines, it was something that I didn't really have a choice in the matter. Just had to push forward with Katie for her.
In terms of the look of the film, there's no artifice. It really is a stripped down approach in terms of the aesthetic, and usually there would be it would be juxtaposed with the sentiment of the character, and here it's sort of like it's a strong dose of reality. It looks real, yet this character, and I won't call her a Disney character, that's unfair, but because she still maintains that hope. It's sort of like it's a fun parallel when you're looking at something that's so not drab, but that could be depressing in a way, but yet there's this clash of sentiments or feelings. So I was wondering if you could discuss specifically the aesthetics, the look that you borrow, or that you chose to use for Katie.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the color palette, I wanted to have the colors be as feminine as possible. The sunsets in the Southwest really quite remarkable in wintertime, like at the beginning or at the end.
Okay.
In the Southwest, and so then I knew that we wanted to shoot around that time to have those pastels. In terms of the aesthetic, in terms of the production design, I wanted everything to feel as real and as authentic as possible. But then at the same time, slightly elevated as well too, because as you said, like Katie is kind of a Disney character in some way, where she is kind of fairy tale-esque, because she does hold that incredible strength that seems otherworldly, or seems I don't know. It's just something that's really quite rare. I mean, I certainly have never met anybody that is like Katie. You can see glimpses of that, and you can see that sort of hope and that resilience between people that might be like 50% or 80% of what Katie has. So everything is slightly elevated, and the performances should just be real and authentic as much as possible to sort of help balance all that out. If you drive across the country, you can see that. Western Pennsylvania, you can see. If you go down south, you go to the Southwest, there's a lot of people that are really struggling. But in terms of what moves me in the arts, I mean, I love, I suppose three main things. I love great writing. Like Stoner, I don't know if you've read Stoner, that is a brilliant, brilliant book. There's not a wasted word within that book.
Okay.
And that is so refreshing to read something like that, where it feels spiritual. I love performances, particularly the performances that an actress can provide. I feel like there's a different way of acting between the sexes for the most part. There's some men that they have a feminine way of acting, and that's what I really respond to. I mean, I feel like they're actually feeling something you can see within their eyes. There are very few men that actually respond, that actually act with their eyes and their emotion, but a lot of great actresses do, and that's what makes them fantastic. Like Charlotte Rampling is a goddess. Yeah. Did you see 45 Years?
Yes, I did. She's up there with Isabelle Huppert. These are gods among us.
I know, yeah. So seeing the performances, even if the story if it doesn't necessarily resonate with me, just to see work like that certainly moves me, and I can't shake that off, and that will live with me until the day that I die. And then the other thing is music. I'm a parasite to music. I mean, that really sort of defines a period of your life, or it defines a mood or a tone that you can sort of run with, either in your personal life or within a work. Like writing Katie, I mean, what I do when I start a project is I spend a lot of weeks just making a playlist of all the music for that particular world, and then I just sort of water it down to like 10 or 15 songs, and I just pick one, and I just listen to that song on repeat, sort of carry the entire writing process of that project. So for Katie, it was a song by daughter called Switzerland, which I love that song, but thank God Spotify does not have a count on it. I probably listened to that song like 6,000 times, 7,000 times.
I could see her listening to perhaps Dolly.
Yeah.
Dolly would be a part of that world.
Totally.
I'll ask you one final question, because you kind of brought it up. So Chris Abbott's character is I won't call him a brute, but yeah, he is standoffish because he's living his own turmoil, and thankfully you don't go into backstory too much. You present that character as is. Perhaps discuss how the rapport between those two characters, Katie and
Bruno.
Yeah.
Well, Bruno's life, his backstory reflects Katie's in so many ways. He has just internalized the damage of his childhood and of his upbringing in a different way. It's kept him quiet, and it's kept him with a great wall and barrier between himself and everything else. And he hasn't been loved before. He hasn't been shown kindness or affection. And Katie's really the first time that he's had that. But yeah, his backstory, he doesn't know who his father is. There's no real relationship that he has with his mother. He has no idea about his extended family. And he's handled all that completely differently than Katie does. And I think in a way that would probably be much more realistic in terms of like how I would internalize an upbringing like that. I would probably be quiet and stick to myself and try not to engage with people. Whereas Katie has done quite the opposite of just like, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to push forward in my own way. This is how I'm going to respond to the shit that is my life, and I'm going to make the most of it. So the two of them are supposed to reflect one another in terms of the backstories.
Yeah, they're cut from the same cloth, but
exactly.
but they're like you say, the one internalizes it and one externalizes it, and therefore
completely.
those forces do attract. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.